sometimes we don't listen to what he says. And in this, I think both of us have the same color of blood. Because he said something, and I've internalized that if you hurt me, perhaps I might forgive you. But if you hurt my mother, her name is India, I will neither forgive nor forget. And in a public speech in Patan, Gujarat, during the election in 2019, I was listening to him. And he has this habit of sort of wagging his finger. And he said in Hindi, he said, "Chun chun ke hisab lena meri fitrat hai. If you trouble my mother," in Hindi he said, "to ghar mein ghus ke marunga." And we had this massive earthquake in Sikkim in 2011. The road from Siliguri to Gangtok is the capital of Sikkim, it's the lifeline, was broken in 300 places. The then Prime Minister asked us to find out which country had the best technology. Australia has terrific technology for mountain roads. We asked them, and they used some racket, something called Google Earth, and they said, well, it's broken in 300 places. 6 weeks to send in the equipment, 6 weeks after that to repair the road, broken in 300 places. We were not going to wait 12 weeks to be able to carry supplies to our people. How long could we go on doing it by helicopter? The Prime Minister said, ask the border roads of India. I called the Director General. I said, sir, we need to know, do you think you'll be able to handle this? He says, give me some time to do a survey. I'll tell my boys, this is the Border Roads Organization, very good in building border roads. I'll find out, I'll come back to you. You're quite right. Whether it's a sadhu or a sant or a rishi, there will be opposition. Yeah. There's so many countries in the world. I don't see a Hispanic fellow becoming president of the United States. I don't see, they haven't had a woman president. We've had two. Yeah. I don't see anyone who's not forgive me for saying this, a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, the WASP as they call them, becoming head of government in the country that we are talking about.
Jai Shri Krishna, Namaste, and welcome to Citti Media's Current Affairs Show. Today we have a very esteemed guest joining us, Ambassador Dr. Deepak Vohra, and we'll be discussing an array of topics in the current news and affairs program. Thank you so much for joining us, Ambassador Ji. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's an honor and pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to start with the recent Indian dream. We have a new president in India, a lady who's inspirational and smashed all the barriers and that glass ceiling. I heard a phrase recently that was apparently said by Dr. Ambedkar. He said that the day a tribal woman makes it to presidency of India is the day that reservations should be removed as well. We have Modi ji, once a chaiwala, who is now one of the world's greatest leaders. So we are smashing barriers of casteism, ego, nepotism, elitism, all the things India was accused of. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, thank you very much. Always an honor and a pleasure to be with you. I hope I'm able to respond to your questions. She was elected on 21st July, the day on which Neil Armstrong became the first person to walk on 1969. And today, all Indians like me are over the moon. We now have a people's president and a people's prime minister without fancy degrees from foreign universities. Truly, India is Vishwa Guru in every sense of the term. Let me tell you something else. 25th of July is observed as World Health and Happiness Day. And sure enough, we were just so happy when she was sworn in. Some, of course, will say that it is merely symbolic, but sooner rather than later, symbolism becomes a reality. I stand 6 inches taller as an Indian, and my heart swells with pride. And unlike in so many so-called liberal democracies, any citizen of India can become the head of state, irrespective of caste, religion, or socio-economic level. The Indian military that will march on the 26th of January 2023, our Republic Day, will proudly salute their Supreme Commander, President Draupadi. It's quite amazing. Of course, global attention has been on her a little bit, but everybody says, well, this is a one-off thing, and the scheduled castes, scheduled tribes are still depressed. I say, give me a break. Happy birthday. We've broken the barrier. Celebrate that with India. Stop nitpicking. Stop finding fault. Colonialism, my dear friends from the West, is dead. Now also get rid of your colonial mindset. We don't need lectures from you. We know what to do. We're absolutely proud of Draupadi Murmu. I know her. I've met her. She belongs to the Santhal, a Munda ethnic group native to South Asia. It's the largest tribe in the state of Jharkhand. We also find them in Assam, Tripura, Bihar, Chhattisgarh, Odisha, and West Bengal, other states from India. All I can say is that her election is a victory, not just for one caste or community or religion in India. It's a victory for India. We are very proud of it.
Absolutely. Very well said, Gauraji. Absolutely. Very, very well said. Also, I wanted to ask you, Ambassador G, you have the honor of working with Prime Minister Modi ji as well on a close quarter. Could you give us some more insight about him? Maybe things we don't know about him. What makes him tick? He's nobody I know.
Let me put it to you like this. I don't work at close quarters, but I observe him from close quarters, if that is the correct way of putting it. Let me tell you this. As a special advisor in 3 African countries and in the remote Ladakh area of India, he's a man with his feet firmly planted on the ground. No pretensions. There are no airs. Doesn't claim to be a great intellectual, but he understands what the people want, and he gives that to them. And the people are very, very pleased with him. Wherever I go, they talk about it. We've been speaking about the citizenship thing for years. Nobody had the courage to do it. We had given this special status to the beautiful, beautiful state of Jammu and Kashmir. People talked about it. Everybody said, oh, they are robbing us, they are stealing money, whatever. Nobody had the courage to do anything. He comes along and says, okay, buddy, it's gone. One other thing, ma'am, sometimes we don't listen to what he says. And in this, I think both of us have the same color of blood. Because he said something, and I've internalized that if you hurt me, perhaps I might forgive you. But if you hurt my mother, her name is India, I will neither forgive nor forget. And in a public speech in Patan, Gujarat, during the election in 2019, I was listening to him. And he has this habit of sort of wagging his finger. And he said in Hindi, he said, chun chun ke hisab lena meri fitrat hai, that I will, I'll settle the score with you. And he said, if you trouble my mother, in Hindi he said, to ghar mein ghus ke marunga. I'll get into your house and I'll beat you up. You can hide in the 7th purgatory. I'll bring you up from there. He says, don't mess with India. And then he said something very interesting. We had this little Air Force confrontation between the 2 countries. One of our planes was shot down, and the wing commander who was piloting the aircraft, he was taken prisoner, and then he was released very quickly.
Yes.
And the Prime Minister said something very interesting. He told the people of India, someday I'll tell you what happened. But if they hadn't released this guy, they would go around telling the whole world that Modi really beat us up. So I think I felt very proud when he said that. These guys released him very quickly. He's back. He's now performing his duties. So if I have to say something about the Prime Minister, I would say that there are 3 things that define his character. The first is integrity. The second is integrity. The third is integrity. And none can question his sincere, boundless love for India. In Kargil, I'm a special advisor, and there I'm a Buddhist by acceptance, if one might say so. My mother was Buddhist. So there's a huge statue of the Lord Buddha at a place called Apati in Kargil. about 100 feet high. Same family as the Bamiyan Buddhas, which were destroyed by the Taliban in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
It's 2,000 years old.
Yeah.
And I requested the Indian Army to put a little tombstone for me at the feet of the Lord. And what it says, ma'am, if you don't mind, I'll repeat it to you.
Please do.
In my own hand, it's written Deepak Vohra, Indian, 1951, the year I was born, to eternity. And below that it says, scattered in the dust, silent I remain. When India's bugle calls, I will rise again.
Wow.
And I'm told that when one of the big fellows saw it, his eyes were moist. And he asked that, who is this incurable romantic? When he was told, he said, oh, I know the guy. Truly, truly, he's obsessed with his mother. Her name too is India. There we are.
Beautiful. That's absolutely beautiful, Ambassador Shi. I mean, yes, it's an emotional statement. It really is beautiful. But just actually touching on a couple of points you raised with the Kargil war that we had, Jammu Kashmir. Recently, the defense minister actually, he said that Jammu and Kashmir belong to India. Pakistani occupied Kashmir is Indian. What are your thoughts on that?
There's no question about it. It's ours, and it's only a matter of time before we exercise our de facto jurisdiction over there. Let me take a few minutes, if you permit, ma'am, to talk to you a little bit about where we see our world, and Kashmir will be part of that, in the next 3 years, if you permit. Our world at 2025. And of course, it's also the India story. Now, when I was in school, we were taught that there were 2 time zones. There was before Christ, BC, and there was Anno Domini in the year of our Lord AD. Now we have 2. We have BC, which is before COVID. We have AC, which is after COVID. And then we have this temporary period of DC, which is during COVID. That's what we're going through right now. You've seen the map of India. To the millions of people who are watching this program. Take a look at the map of India. Jammu and Kashmir is in the north, and then we have the south, we have the northeast, etc. Now let the map lie on its side. Let it tilt to the left and become horizontal. Jammu and Kashmir becomes the west. The south becomes the east. The northeast becomes the crown jewel of India. And then Gujarat and Maharashtra, 2 other states, become the south. Question: why do I have to accept that Flemish cartographer Mercator, Gerardo Mercator, whatever was his name? Why do I have to accept his projection? Take a look at his map. Greenland is huge. The further away you get from the equator, the bigger those countries become. That's not true at all. Europe is not the center of the universe. If at all it is, if you were really to look at the map properly, we in India are the center of our planet. So it's a question of perspective. Something that you should try, all Indians should. Look at the map from a different angle, and then you will realize. Question here again, which I ask. I've spoken to over 50 million of my competitors and asked them a question: who developed Europe and Japan and USA and Canada and Australia and South Korea and Singapore and whatever? Was it extraterrestrials from Mars? Was it aliens from the moon? Was it creatures from the oceans? Or was it the people of those countries themselves? And the answer comes, where's the people of those countries themselves? Then I ask, so what's wrong with you? And then they start looking at each other and feel very uncomfortable. We surveyed 1,000 Indians across ages. They all said they were not satisfied with the present state of affairs. They wanted more. 7 out of 10, I repeat this, 7 out of 10, all young people, your age, ma'am, said they plan to do something about it at an individual level. The older people, the government should do this, the government should do that, whatever. But that's 7 out of 10. All young people, all the young people saying they plan to do something about it. It tells us that these kids know what they want. Over the last few months, we've been witnessing this terrible conflict in the Ukraine. Hundreds of serving and former global leaders, they came for the Ricina dialogue in the nation's capital in April. They came to discuss the Ukraine crisis. Why? Why is India's opinion so important? because we are the swing state. It's our moral stature. It's our acceptability to everybody in the world. Let me also tell the world, all those who watch your amazing, amazing program. In April last year, when virus 2 attacked us, we were not prepared. We stumbled. The world was mocking us. Some of these international channels barged into the intensive care units of our hospitals and started live telecasts from there. What they were saying was India claims to be an information technology superpower, but it can't even provide oxygen cylinders or hospital beds or medicines to those affected by the virus. You know, ma'am, we regained control very quickly. There's an English expression, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. What we say is, when the going gets toughest, the Indians get going. We recovered the fastest of any country. And the latest figures that we are seeing for economic development are suggesting a number that is beyond anybody's expectation. It seems that we are going to grow very, very fast. So what is it that is going to happen in the next 3 years? What is it that the world wants? What is it that India can offer? What is this convergence in our brave new world? There are 4 issues, and there isn't a fifth. If anyone tells you that there are more than 4, I would urge you to be a little careful about belief. First is healthcare. Second is climate stability. Third is recovery and development through free and open seas, without terrorism, without intimidation, without domination. And the fourth is the management of new technologies. There used to be a great Indian thinker 2,400 years ago, a person called Chanakya, also known as Kautilya. He said something very interesting. He said there is no friendship without self-interest. So what is the self-interest of India? What is the self-interest of the world? What role can we play in shaping the emerging world order? The number one priority for everybody, for you, for me, for the 8 billion people on our planet, is health. The Chinese virus is the biggest threat to human survival ever. And that needs medical expertise, needs infrastructure. China sent its visiting card to 200 countries. The visiting card said virus. It gave an example of its power to hurt. People will continue to die because China continues to lie about the virus. And of course, after working from overseas for 2 years, the virus has now returned to work from home. Our visiting card says vaccine. We don't give you an example of our power. We show you the power of our example to lead. There used to be an American president, I'm sure you remember him. I call him, jokingly I refer to him as Donald Trump. Everybody says Donald Trump. But he asked us for help. We responded immediately. What did he say? He said, we will never forget. India has been great. You may not like him, but he was, after all, the constitutionally mandated president of his country, and this is what he said. We gifted several million doses of the vaccine to many nations. Why not? Are we related to them? Did we expect them to do anything to us? We set up this superb COVID platform last year in July. We shared it free with 60 countries. We customized it for them. We trained their people how to use it. And they're all so pleased. We didn't ask them for money because we don't want to make a fortune out of misfortune. And you heard of a thing called the United Nations. The Secretary General says India's vaccine production capacity is our best asset. We gave vaccines to UN peacekeepers. And what do some people argue, the critics? Well, your doctor-patient ratio is terrible, so you'll never be able to deal with the virus. All right, give me a break. Have you heard, ma'am, of smallpox and diphtheria and AIDS and polio and your skin disease and maternal and neonatal tetanus? We had a dismal doctor-patient ratio. Yet we vanquished these diseases. And I promise you, ma'am, with all the authority that my position gives me, we will destroy the virus. India will. The second area
I don't doubt that.
come again?
I don't doubt that.
Thank you, very kind. The second thing that we are looking at is climate change, which can again destroy human civilization. Climate-related disasters have tripled in the last 30 years. Why? Well, the Arctic is heating faster than the rest of the planet. The oceans are warming, forming what they call heat domes, and all of us and our grandmothers are continuing to use fossil fuels. 14,000 scientists have declared a global health emergency. The World Meteorological Organization said our energy system is broken, and now you are seeing wildfires in Portugal, Spain, France, Greece, heat wave in Siberia, Canada, USA, worst floods in the century in Assam, Bangladesh, unprecedented hurricanes in the USA, floods in China, drought in Africa, Latin America. People are stealing water in California. And you know what's happening to Australia. Sometimes there's a drought, then there's a bushfire, then there are floods and water. This can destroy the human civilization. Who's damaged our planet? The Prime Minister
Humans.
recently said India has never damaged our planet. We worship trees, man. We worship rivers.
Yes.
We worship mountains. Our river, our mother river, as you know, is called the Ganga. We call her Ganga Ma. We call her the other river Narmada Ma. It's mother. How can we damage our mother? We've never done it. This is the great hope of the world, that India can show the way. We have the International Solar Alliance that we pioneered. The Prime Minister talked of the concept of one sun, one world, one grid. He recently launched a lifestyle for environment life movement. Do you know we had set certain green energy targets that we would reach 40% of our installed energy capacity from green fuels, 40% by 2030. We did it 9 years ahead of schedule. We did it in 2021. 40% of our installed energy capacity is based on green fuels, which is why in the latest report by, I think that company is called Bloomberg, they've said that while the rest of the world is crumbling under an energy crisis, Europe in particular, because the Russians have refused to send their gas, whatever, and other countries are paying the price because gas prices are skyrocketing and oil prices are. This report says the one country that stands out that is not suffering is India. That's because we switched years ago to green energy. We knew what was coming. And this one man has carried the burden on his shoulder. Oh, people criticized him. Oil is so cheap. Why do you have to do it? He says, no, it won't last forever. And we're seeing the vision of this man. I believe it's really quite remarkable. The third issue is recovery and development through free and open seas. When the West came to conquer Asia and Africa and Latin America, they didn't come in planes. There were no planes. They didn't come in motor cars. There were no motor cars. They didn't come by train. Trains didn't exist. They came by sea. So the recovery will also happen through free and open seas. Nobody stopped them at that time. And we are telling the world, don't stop us now. This recovery has to be through free and open seas. The Prime Minister of India hosted last year in August the first ever standalone session of the United Nations Security Council on safe, free and open seas. Oh, China ranted and raved and then fell in line. And we recently had in May this very successful summit of the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, what we call the Quad in Japan. And we've launched an Indo-Pacific Economic Forum. And what we've said there is that we need free and open seas. Period. We don't want anything else. And then the fourth thing, in our new world, hyper-technology will drive everything. Engineered intelligence, people call it artificial intelligence, digital economy, machine learning, deep learning, Industry 4, Industry 5, all kinds of terms are being bandied about. When these new technologies emerge, ma'am, who's going to lead? Nations with abundant, educated, young minds. Take a look at demographics. 1 out of 3 Japanese today is above 60 years. 1 out of 4 Europeans, 1 out of 6 Chinese, 1 out of 12 Indians. When I was studying at the Sorbonne in Paris a million years ago, French historian Alfred Sauvy predicted, somewhat lightheartedly, that Europe would become an old continent of old people living in old homes discussing old ideas. And the Pope, I think this was in 2014, I didn't say it, he did. He said Europe is an elderly and haggard continent. There is a concept that we use which is called median age, which means half the population is that and half is above that. For us, it's 29. I love telling young Indians that, like them, one of the 65 crore or whatever the figure is, we are 1.4, so one of the 700 million Indians who's less than 29, while the rest of India is more than 29. So 29 is our median age. China is 40, United States is 30, Japan is 49. Would you believe it? The median age in Japan is 49. Half of all Japanese are below 49, half are above 49. They've forgotten how to make babies. And I used to tell my Japanese friends, we have the technology, we can transfer it to you. We know how to produce children. Look at the number we produce. Last year, Japanese mothers produced less than 1 million babies, and that country sells more adult diapers than baby diapers. They, in fact, just appointed a minister for loneliness, because their women don't get married early, they become very lonely, there are lots of suicide. Even Britain has a minister for loneliness, etc., etc., while we are bursting with new enthusiasm and energy. Now, what we are seeing therefore happen, ma'am, that as abundant young minds begin to dominate, you see it in every area of the economy, digital economy. We have 41 million online transactions in India. We have 40% of the global total, worth $3 billion US. The Reserve Bank of India had prepared a report by 2025. India's online digital transactions would hit $1 trillion. $1 trillion has 12 zeros. We've already hit. We have over 70,000 new age tech-enabled startups and almost 90 unicorns growing. All, I repeat, ma'am, all are kids as far as I'm concerned. Young children, young boys and girls who are setting up these unicorns. We are just so proud of them because these new ideas come naturally to them. I'm sure you've heard of the Mahabharata. Yudhishthira's 4 brothers are lying senseless because they drink water from the pond without responding to the queries of the spirit, the guardian spirit, the yakshas, we call it. So when Yudhishthira shows up there, he wonders what's happened to his brothers. The yakshas answer my question, and you can revive your brothers. The question is, what is a person's most valuable possession? Without hesitation, Yudhishthira said, is education, knowledge. And his brothers are revived. What do we have today? 50,000 universities, colleges in India today. We had 500 in 1950. Of course, we don't have the best in the world, according to certain rankings that have been done by various people. Well, happy birthday. We try and get there whenever we can. At the moment, we have to focus on providing a broad-based system of education and network. We have 1.5 million schools. The population of the United States, I repeat this slowly, the population of the United States is 330 million. I have 340 million students, and over half of my students are girls. Thank you for giving me a lecture about gender equality. See the number of kids we have, girls, and in the civil service exam or in the high school exam in colleges, they just seem to do better than anybody else. It was not always like this. Sons and daughters of India, 1951, 1956, agriculture collapse. We had no money, we had no foreign exchange, fought a war with China in 1962. 65, we fought another war. There was drought. Our currency was devalued. Our leader then, Mrs. Gandhi, went to the US. I worked with her in 1966 to seek food aid. The American newspaper said the new Indian leader comes begging. Can you imagine our humiliation? We made the largest imports of wheat in human history, 9 and 11 million tons. There's an English expression, man, you've heard it, living from hand to mouth. We were living from ship to mouth. And we were told not to eat on Mondays. Yes. Sons and daughters of India, I have slept hungry for 52 days in 1966. Ask me what hunger is, I will tell you. And then Mrs. Gandhi told an aide, I don't want India to ever beg for food again. 2022, second largest producer of food grains in the world. People are now coming to us saying, help, we don't have food. And India is giving it to them. Then we had the oil price shock, 1970s, 1980s. We were in bad shape. We had less than $2 billion in our treasury. We wanted a loan of $600 million to import some essentials. And our friends in England and Switzerland said, we don't trust your economy. So, mortgage your gold. 67 tons of our gold was mortgaged. It was carried to those countries, 1991. And today, 2022, 30 years, 31 years, we sit on $700 billion worth of foreign exchange reserves, fourth largest in the world. When did our comprehensive national renaissance begin? I believe it began with mobile telephony, with the metro, with the Aadhaar card, social security card, with housing, roads, railways, airports, etc. 2000, there was the Y2K bug. I don't know if you remember, you're probably too young. When everybody was scared that the computers would collapse. And everybody and his grandmother and the grandmother's neighbor said, ask the Indians to fix it. 2003, foreign aid, we said thank you, but no thank you, bye-bye. 2004, the tsunami came. Ma'am, we mobilized hundreds of helicopters, ships, soldiers within 12 hours. 2005, there was this massive earthquake in Pakistan, occupied Kashmir. You referred to that. We flew in 25 tons of relief material. We gave $25 million cash, all within 24 hours. 2014, Maldives survived on drinking water carried by our planes and ships. 2015, Nepal had a devastating earthquake. You might remember this. The worst in its history.
Yes.
Do you know that we mobilized in 15 minutes? 15 minutes. Our assistance to Nepal was being arranged, and the then Nepalese Prime Minister said, Nepal is blessed to have a neighbor like India. Now, these are things that I want the world to be aware of, the world to remember. Then, of course, you know about the yoga resolution. I'm sure you do it. Co-sponsored in 2015 by 177 out of 193 UN members, largest in UN history. Yeah, man, the evacuation in 2015, we brought out people of 40 countries. We were the only country allowed to do so. I'd gone to France that year, and this guy at the airport, young kid, the immigration chap, he looks at me, he says, Ambassador of India. I said, yes. He said, well, you brought out 150 Frenchmen or whatever from Yemen. So, buddy, if we made a mistake, we'll take them back. So he laughed, and we were speaking in French. So he got out of his little cabin. He came up to me. He says, I want to say something. I said, go right ahead. He looked at me, he saluted, and he said, thank you, India. You know, you can't imagine how good I felt at that time. So we have evacuated these nationals. We brought out over 20,000 of our own sons and daughters from Ukraine. We are smoking terrorists out of their holes wherever they are. And then, ma'am, something that not many people might be aware of, in 2019, I think it was the latter part of the year, when Vladimir Putin talked about being under pressure over Crimea, whatever, and sanctions. And then we said, look, you helped us when we needed help. Today, India, and this is 2019, gave him a soft loan of $1 billion. Poor, starving India. The West didn't report it. They won't accept this. That India had the capability. Whatever the reasons, we did it. We did it out of goodwill. There was no Ukraine conflict at that time. Whatever had happened, had happened. He hadn't invaded the country. We just felt we had the capability, so we did it. 1969, the founding conference, and sorry, I'm taking a little bit of time in Morocco of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. We were invited. When we got there, we were booted out. We were told, you can't go. And we said, why did you invite us? They said, we made a mistake. 50 years later, when they have their 50th meeting of the foreign ministers, they ask us, please be the guest of the same organization. Gender ratio of 900 females to 1,000 males, 900 women to 1,000 men in 2015. 2022, 1,020 females for every 1,000 males. See what is happening? It's become a people's movement. This idea of gender equality, Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, save the daughter, educate the daughter, opening 2 bank accounts per second, building 1 toilet every 2 seconds, building 4 kilometers, I repeat, 4 kilometers of highway every hour. How am I confident that India can play its destiny role? Ma'am, India has children like you. That's why I'm confident. 2 billion vaccinations in 18 months. Happy birthday! Promising the world 1.2 billion vaccines in 14 months, lifting one national out of extreme poverty every 1.5 seconds. What are we talking about? Our time has come. Prime Minister said this. There's a book written some years ago, how India is making its place in the world. Our time truly has come. All I want to say that I listened to US President Barack Obama came thrice to India, twice as president, once when he had retired. And he came and he said to his children when he went back that I've seen these kids in Bangalore competing with you directly, working every day so that they can be number one. You heard of a fellow called Bill Gates. Name is Gates, but he makes windows. And this character in the Singapore FinTech Festival 2 years ago said, go to India. Things are really exploding there. Innovation is phenomenal. The country with the 6th largest private wealth in the world at $8.2 trillion. And by the way, do you know what we spend it on? It's interesting. Number one expenditure is on looking better. So we have no wonder we have a Miss Universe or a Miss World or whatever so often. But I just want to tell you, ma'am, that this is the new spirit of India. You talked about the Kargil conflict. Let me tell you a true story. At that time, the Kargil conflict, we had this massive recruitment drive for people wishing to join the Indian military. This 23, 24-year-old kid from a state called Bihar volunteered for the army. He was told he could not join because he was lame in both legs. His legs had been cut off below the knees. You know what his response was? His response was, I have come to fight the enemy, not to run away from the enemy. Now, this is something that reflects the true spirit of India. Then we had this massive earthquake in Sikkim in 2011. The road from Siliguri to Gangtok is the capital of Sikkim, it's the lifeline, was broken in 300 places. The then Prime Minister asked us to find out which country had the best technology. Australia has terrific technology for mountain roads. We asked them, and they used some racket, something called Google Earth, and they said, well, it's broken in 300 places. 6 weeks to send in the equipment, 6 weeks after that to repair the road, broken in 300 places. We were not going to wait 12 weeks to be able to carry supplies to our people. How long could we go on doing it by helicopter? The Prime Minister said, ask the border roads of India. I called the Director General. I said, sir, we need to know, do you think you'll be able to handle this? He says, give me some time to do a survey. I'll tell my boys, this is the Border Roads Organization, very good in building border roads. I'll find out, I'll come back to you. And as I sit before you, and as God is my witness, 19 hours later he called. He said, tell the Prime Minister, the road is over. 19 hours later, as against 6 weeks. We lost a few kids because they were working round the clock. I went to one Sikkimese home, 50-year-old mother. She said, my son died. Now I told her, I said, look, whatever we can do, I personally, because I was there making a film for our national channel, Doordarshan, all that money is going to you. I wrote her a personal check. Government will give you compensation. Military will, border roads will, federal government will, whatever. Anything else I can do for you? She said, my elder kid died for India. I have another son, 22, just 2 boys. Can you get him a job? I said, the moment I get back to India, I'll talk to Delhi, I'll talk to the topmost industrialists, get him a job. I'm special advisor, there shouldn't be a problem. She said, I didn't ask you for a job in the private sector. Get him a job in border roads so that when the time comes, he too can die for India. Wow. Ma'am, as the water rushed to my eyes, it still does. I haven't met her since. I held her hands in mine and I said, Mother, I salute you. If I'm born in India again, may it be from the womb of a mother like you. Sacrifice me for India. That would be my greatest glory. That is what the new India is all about, ma'am, which I want to tell the millions of people. And when I spoke to this woman, I got an answer to a question that has haunted me from childhood. What defines us as Indians? I got the answer. We're not Indians because we live in India. We are Indians because India lives in us. 15% of the world that ruled the other 85% for 200 years. What do they face? Disruption, depression, loneliness. The UK has a minister for loneliness, so does Japan now. We are bubbling with self-confidence, new energy. Deloitte carries out an annual attitude survey of millennials and Gen Z, born between 1983 and 2003, 43 countries. And what does it say? that Indians are the most optimistic. Their top priority is to make an impact. So sons and daughters of India, for too long have others written our destiny. We remember our past. We made mistakes. Never again. Now we make a commitment. We will write our future ourselves. No one else will write it for us. So as an Indian, faith and confidence in yourself. Cynicism should not affect you. It does not empower, it paralyzes you. It makes you feel helpless and hopeless. One of my great heroes was a person called Genghis Khan. Everybody thinks he was a great tyrant, but I admired something he said. He said, if you're afraid, don't do it. But if you do it, then don't be afraid. Because beyond fear lies victory. Someone once asked this wise old man, how do I change the world? He said, be the change you want to see. His name was Mohandas Gandhi. Once I saw an issue for the Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Lesotho, and I didn't know anything about him. In any case, it got done. Then he called me to his office, smiling, and he said, Ambassador Deepak, are you God? And I said, sir, I'm not God, I'm an Indian. That's the next best thing. The little fellow clapped his hands and said, you are irrepressible, Ambassador. I said, sir, you asked me a question, I've given you an answer. Ma'am, 125 years ago, a fellow called Swami Vivekananda had said that future India will be much greater than ancient India because India was awakening. Today, we have woken up, ma'am.
Yes.
I'm sorry I took so much of time.
No, I absolutely love everything you have to say. Speaking of which, ancient Vedic India is something that the world still has lots to learn from. Citti media, we always talk about Hindu human rights. We're a great defender for it because anyone born in India is a Hindu because it's Hindustan, right?
Absolutely.
It's not just a religion, it's a
because
geography.
the fellows who came here, the Greeks could not pronounce the H. So the Indus River became, Hindu became Hindu. And from Hindu came Hindustan. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes.
So it's Sanatan Dharam which you talk about. It's universal religion. What are they talking about? All these human rights are human wrongs in the West. For us, we've had this from time immemorial. Yeah. I mean, this is what does the Prime Minister say? Sabka saath, sabka vikas, sabka vishwas. Together with everybody, everybody's confidence, everybody's development. That's what human rights is all about. That's what India's message eternally has been.
Yes, we have a history, though, a recent history of various invasions where there's been genocide, ethnocide of Hindu culture. So at Citti Media, we actually coined the phrase civilization security. We have national security, but How do we actually protect civilization? What are your ideas on this?
All right, then I can only quote to you Allama Iqbal was a great poet of United India. Then, of course, he moved over to Pakistan. And his favorite, and I'll say it in the language he used it in, then I'll translate it for you. Yunano Misr Roma sab mit gaye jahan se, that Yunan, that's Greece and Rome and Egypt, have all disappeared, their ancient civilizations. Abhi tak magar hai baki naam un nishan hamara. We still continue to exist. Kuch baat to hai ki hasti mitti nahi hamari. There must be some reason why we cannot be obliterated, even though the whole world is our enemy. And do you know why he asks? Because sare jahan se acha Hindustan hamara. Because India is the best in the world. Now this is something he encapsulated the whole thing. They've tried. Ma'am, I go to Latin America. I've served there. All their names are Pedro or Roberto or Alberto. Now, of course, they're coming back to their own names. But my name is Deepak. I have a brother, his name is Kiran. My sister's name is Rekha. My wife's name is Rekha. We've not given up our culture. So when you've talked about civilizational survival, by definition, the roots of our civilization are so deep that no one can even hope to damage it. Or they can conquer us politically. They can damage us economically. But we will triumph civilizationally.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And I just want to now bring you a little bit over to Britain because we are going through a It was coming. We knew that it was coming. So we have a two-horse race at the moment with Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak. So Rishi Sunak is obviously, he's of Indian origin. He is a practicing Hindu. So we have noticed with this competition going on that there's been a lot of smearing going on, a bit of racism bubbling under the surface. We're not sure if he will lose purely because of his skin color, because out of the two, he's definitely the stronger candidate. He has the finance and economical background that Britain currently needs.
And
What
he's
are your
married
thoughts?
to the daughter of a
Yes,
legendary Indian. Sure.
yeah, absolutely.
Well,
So,
ma'am, I understand your question. What people are worried about, and I got a wonderful WhatsApp message. They are worried that 10 Downing Street might become 10 Browning Street. If this guy, I thought that was very funny. You're quite right. Whether it's a sadhu or a sant or a rishi, there will be opposition.
yeah,
There's so many countries in the world. I don't see a Hispanic fellow becoming president of the United States. I don't see. They haven't had a woman president. We've had two. I
yeah,
don't see anyone who's not a, forgive me for saying this, a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, the WASP as they call them, becoming head of government in the country that we are talking about. Many countries have requirements that the person should be of a particular religion or should have been born in that country, etc. As far as we are concerned, we are of the world. The world is of us. India is a world unto itself. And if Mr. Rishi Sunak becomes the prime minister, I, for one, will feel very happy. As at least the British have redeemed themselves in my eyes. The color of his skin is no reflection on the caliber of his brain.
absolutely.
And if the moment they realize that, they recognize that, the better will it be for them.
Yes, yes,
So I
absolutely.
certainly hope that he wins. I don't know what the present status is. We are talking at India time 1950 hours on the 26th of July 2022. So I'm quite sure that there's going to be, as you rightly pointed out, there's a smear campaign going on. They're talking about all kinds of things. He observes Diwali, observes Dussehra, whatever. I mean, the United Nations building is lit up in the colors of India. They celebrate Diwali. It's become a national holiday in certain states in America. They understand the significance. The Deepavali festival is a spiritual awakening. It's a festival of lights, the light that dispels darkness. Why do you treat it as a Hindu festival? It reflects the triumph of good over evil, unless you guys want to live with evil for the rest of your lives. Look at the example that India sets of the Lord Ram. Now, ma'am, since I'm on this subject, let me tell you something. Give me a moment. In the Mahabharata, they talk about women in India being violated or not treated with dignity. In the Mahabharata, there is an episode where Draupadi Ma is being disrobed, and she appeals to Bhishma Pitama, the great uncle of the Kauravas and the Pandavas. His name was Bhishma. And she says, help. He looks away. And then, of course, the Lord Krishna comes and saves her. I'm not Bhishma Pitama. On the other hand, in the Ramayana, when Ravana is abducting Sita Ma, there's a vulture called Jatayu, old, infirm, very sick. And he flies up to accost the abductor, the kidnapper. And he fights with him, even though he knows that he will lose, because he fights for truth. He fights for the protection of the women of India. And what is his reward? When the Lord Ram finds him, the Lord Ram does his final rites with his own hands. What a great blessing. So we are Jatayu. We may lose, but we will fight for what is right. And the right is what our fight is all about.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, Ambassador Ji. And you were talking earlier about education, universities, and how our youngsters are the future. The average age, I think you said, was 29.
The median age, not average, the median.
The median age is 29. So recently, many of us have been informed with Madhavanji's great work of the film Rocketry. And we've seen how Nambi Narayanan was persecuted in the media, in the public, by internal forces with the aid of external forces of sabotaging India's ISRO progress. We've recently discovered since 1995 to 2014, 2,500 ISRO staff or top scientists have had untimely deaths that seem to have stopped since 2014. Do you think now foreign powers are going to have any more influence on our sabotage or stalling of our projects?
I know Dr. Nambi Narayanan. I've met him. He was brilliant, and he was working on the cryogenic engine. That's the science of low temperatures. So instead of liquid stuff, there would be other fuels, etc., and it would fly for a much longer period and be more accurate, etc., more controllable. Of course, he was developing that. He was the team leader, and so whoever wanted India not to reach that level, the Americans denied us that technology in the 90s. They even told the Russians, don't give it to these wretched Indian fellows. He was working on developing an indigenous capacity. It put the program back by 20 years. He's been given compensation now, whatever, national recognition. All that is great. It should not have happened. It happened. It'll never happen again. That's the lesson that we have drawn. It certainly set us back, but now we have caught up because we have totally our indigenous capacity. I remember there was a time, ma'am, and I don't mind sharing this, when many of the Western countries that used to launch rockets and so on, build their satellite launch vehicles. They told us, look, you guys focus on developing these satellites that tell you all about the weather, leave the launch to us. We said, happy birthday, we're not doing that. We're going to develop our own launch capability. Our first satellite was launched from French, I think it was a Soviet satellite that launched it, and then from French Guyana, a French launch vehicle, a Soviet launch vehicle launched our first two satellites. Now we launched their satellites. We have the capability to do so. And we have done this because of the brain power of our scientists, of our engineers, the common Indian, the sense of pride. We did not have this sense of pride till the National Renaissance. One example that I love to quote, the number of Olympic medals, what we won in the first 60 years of our independence was nothing. We never got a medal except in hockey or whatever. And then suddenly we start winning it everywhere else because self-confidence brings that. Ma'am, when someone wants to dominate you, the first two things he'll attack are your self-respect and your self-confidence. He'll make you feel totally inferior.
Yes.
But once this self-respect and self-confidence comes, you realize, buddy, I can look you in the eye and tell you, oh, happy birthday. I'm not inferior to you. I am the first generation born in independent India. We need 3 generations for the self-confidence to come back. My kids are the second. Their kids are the third. That's my grandchildren. And they ask me, they said, Grandpa, did the British ever rule India? So, well, sweetheart, I'll tell you about it another time. And they go across the world. The world is their oyster. They don't go out to conquer the world. They go out to serve the world.
Wonderful. But just touching back with the ISRO and the enemy within, any latest updates with Hamid Ansari?
This name keeps cropping up every now and then, and there is an expression in English, there cannot be smoke without a fire. So many people have talked about it. There's this Pakistani journalist, unless somebody says that we bribed the fellow to make all these allegations, what would be gained from it? And he's old, he's in his 80s, he's no longer in any position of authority. He was upset, perhaps so we are told, that he didn't make it to President of India. As Vice President, he was then asked to retire. Whatever the reason, ma'am, we have no motivation to humiliate a person who occupied the second highest position in the country. But the fact that these allegations keep coming up from time to time, and I've heard this from so many of my friends when he was in Iran, the kind of stuff that he was up to when he was our ambassador there. He was one of us in the Foreign Service. We were very proud of him. We no longer are. So somebody, and then he participates in all kinds of international debates and discussions that are meant to denigrate India. Why would he do this? He has a constitution. He took an oath to defend the dignity of India. And by saying India is mistreating its Muslims, oh yes, we mistreated you by elevating you to the second highest position. We've had other Muslims who've reached the highest level. We had Dr. Zakir Hussain Sahab, who was president of India. So why do you talk this kind of stuff? Some people say he's lost it. Others say he's very unhappy. And there is a third and growing group that says he's actually a fifth columnist. So I don't know. Take your pick. I respect him. I've known him. We were in the Foreign Service together. He was senior. So I'll hold my peace on this, except to say that the frequency with which these things keep coming out, and I know that it's being investigated. Every allegation is being thoroughly examined. This I know for a fact. And if the truth comes out and he has to face the consequences, so be it.
Thank you. And just to finally conclude, where do you see India's future, short term, long term, on a global platform, internally? It's a big question, but in a nutshell.
I understand. 1.3 billion people. What is the Constitution of India state? We, the people of India, do hereby adopt, enact, and give to ourselves this Constitution. And what does the United Nations Charters? It also talks about we, etc., the people, and to prevent the scourge of war. So how do you leave out 1.4 billion people, 1/5 or 1/6 of humanity? We have a collective voice, the third largest economy in the world, PPP, the fourth largest in nominal terms, or the fifth largest. I think between us and Britain, there's a little bit of, difference of a couple of $100 billion, but we're catching up very fast. Third most powerful military in the world, not my figures. These are figures from the Global Firepower Index. So when you have this convergence of your military power, economic power, your social power, your reputational power, and your civilization power, India is unstoppable. No one can stop us. Not to dominate the world, but to lead through the power of our example, of an inclusive society, of a society dedicated to the well-being of all. Our ancient sages talked of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, the world is one family. That's what India believes, and that's India's message to the world.
Wonderful. Ambassador Dr. Deepak Vohra ji, this has been an absolute pleasure to have this conversation with you, and I thoroughly look forward to the next time you're joining us at Citti Media.
The moment you invite me, I'll be on. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Namaste.
Please remember to subscribe to us and switch on the notifications for this channel. For our other social media links, more content, and to support our work, please visit citti.net.